Damn it!
What's wrong?
I haven't finished Don Quixote yet. I thought I could, but the book is just way too long and way too dense. I started it almost a month ago, and I'm nowhere near done. What am I gonna do? I promised a review of it.
Well, fortunately, I saw this coming, and I know you hate it when he shows up, but I took the liberty of having Iota draft up a letter to send to your future self to ask for his help. Because I'm sure that you'll eventually finish it, and I figure that he'll want to review it as much as you do now.
Oh, he'll never go for that. You know, preservation of the time stream or some BS like that.
Well, it never hurts to ask.
And there, I finally finished Don Quixote. It only took me a while. Well, anyway, I guess I should... What's this? My God! Michael, what's the catastrophic emergency that you wrote the letter about? My memory is a bit fuzzy when it comes to crossing my own time stream, and there are so many of these emergencies that I'm not sure what goes where in my own personal timeline. I need you to review Don Quixote. What? Well, I promised that I'd review Don Quixote, and I know that you finished it because you found the letter and all. Oh, God damn it, this is why I sent the letter, isn't it? Okay, give me a minute, allow me to check my records and see if I actually am supposed to do this in line with the time stream. Well, according to this, I agreed to do it for some reason, so I'm stuck. Give me the book. Oh good, I needed a day off anyway. Have fun. You owe me for this. I'm sure I make it up to you. Okay. Hello and welcome to the Literary Lair, and to the final episode of Classic Novel Month 3, Revenge of the Lit. I haven't done this in quite a bit, so forgive me if I'm a bit rusty. Today we're going to look at Don Quixote, a book I found out about from an unlikely source, Quantum Leap. The episode, To Catch a Falling Star, is about Sam leaping into an actor who is part of a performance of Man of La Mancha, which is a musical based on this book. And if you're only going to watch one Quantum Leap episode in your lifetime, it might as well be that one. It's a good story with good music to boot. Plus it has good development for both Sam and Al. Anyway, this isn't a Quantum Leap review. It's a book review, so let's talk about the book. Don Quixote was written by Miguel de Cervantes and published in 1516. So let's get to it. Okay, so the cover is minimalist, I guess? It's a scribbly drawing of Don Quixote and what I assume to be his squire Sancho. Other than that, it's a white background with an orange box for the title. Anyway, let's get to the story. The story starts out with Don Quixote, a crazy middle-aged guy who believes himself to be an errant knight and goes out into his village and starts raising hell as he lives out his delusions. That's basically the plot of the story. I could end the review there and not have to have read the entire 1000-page book, but I'm a completionist, so let's keep moving. He becomes a knight after reading countless stories of chivalrous knights and decides that he wants to do that, and finds a set of armor, a horse, and a love interest in Aldonza Lorenzo, a neighboring farm girl that he renames Dulcinea de Tabasco. Hey, Don Quixote, I know that's what happened in that Zen Pencils comic, but you weren't supposed to do what that guy in the comic did. He goes out to do his nightly duties and arrives at an inn, which he thinks is a castle, and meets two prostitutes that he thinks are princesses, along with the innkeeper who Don Quixote believes to be a king. He asks the king to knight him, which he does because, frankly, he's afraid of the crazy man with the sword. The newly knighted Don Quixote then also gets into a fight with a bunch of travelers who try to move his armor out of the mule trough so they can give their mules water. He goes on his way and finds a young boy being beaten by his employer because child labor laws don't exist yet, and neither does child services. Quixote makes the man promise to stop beating the kid, and the guy does, until Quixote leaves and then continues the beating. Quixote then gets into a fight with a group of traders who insult Dulcinea after Don Quixote describes her. Obviously, our insane protagonist loses the fight and is left on the side of the road, being walked home by a neighboring peasant. After that, Quixote's niece and a few others burn all of his chivalric books, and there's a bit of bias during it, since one of the books that was saved from burning was one of Cervantes' own books that he wrote into the story. Yeah, Cervantes was a pretty meta author. They also seal the library and tell Quixote that a wizard did it. Personally, I would have said that a demon did it, but wizards work too. His niece begs him to abandon the chivalrous quests, but he refuses and goes and drags Sancho Panza, an illiterate laborer, into it, telling him that he'll make Sancho a governor of an isle if he leaves his wife and kids to go adventuring. Sancho agrees, and they go out in search of adventure. Don Quixote then proceeds to attack a windmill because he thought it was a giant. However, he explains that that was the wizard's doing, and that he turned the giants into windmills at the last second. They find friars escorting a woman in a carriage, but to Don Quixote they are enchanters holding her captive, because of course they are. He attacks the friars and then gets into a fight with the woman's servant and gets his ear split in the process, but spares the guy when he promises to present himself to Dulcinea. Sancho begins to worry that the authorities will come after them because of the fighting, but Quixote tells him that knights are allowed to use violence and so they are in no danger at all. Quixote sees the damage done to his helmet and swears off violence until he gets his helmet fixed. They soon meet up with a bunch of goat herders and end up joining them for the night, getting drunk and singing together. They also fix Quixote's ear. Quixote tells about the story of the Golden Age when virgins roamed free and the knights protected the virgins, and the herders invite Sancho and Quixote to a funeral of a guy who became a shepherd in the same way that Quixote became a knight, by reading books and just deciding to go out and do it. They leave and end up meeting some Galicians who have their ponies along, and it turns out that Don Quixote's horse is a little bit frisky and tries to mate with the ponies, which the Galicians try to stop by hitting the horse with clubs, and Quixote and Sancho try to defend the horse, leading to them getting beaten as well. They find their way to another inn, which he once again sees as a castle, and finds a servant girl who he once again sees as a princess, and well, he gets himself beaten up again. So this book is basically a crazy guy getting his ass kicked for 1,000 pages. And when he isn't getting his ass kicked, he's doing things that will cause people to kick his ass. They then decide to leave the inn and Quixote doesn't pay, which causes Sancho to get the blame and gets tossed around while wrapped in a blanket. They continue their travels and yet again find something normal that Quixote sees as something magic. This time it's two clouds of dust caused by sheep that Quixote thinks are two rival armies fighting. Quixote begins to describe the knights, but even the author is annoyed by his delusions at this point, and skips to the next part where Quixote rushes into the sheep herd and starts murdering them. The shepherds of the sheep throw stones at Quixote to make him stop, and he tries to cover his ass by saying that a wizard yet again turns the evil things into regular things. And then basically, that happens repeatedly. The entire first book is essentially what I just described. Quixote thinks he's on a quest, he does something stupid, him and Sancho get the crap beating out of them, rinse and repeat. And so ends the first half of the novel. The second half was not released until a decade later, which means technically I'm not on the hook for that, and I don't need to review it right now. Let me just refer to my handy-dandy notebook to see if that's how the timeline plays out, and... damn. Okay, I'm just going to abridge the second part because this is a really long book and I just want to get back to my proper place in the time stream. The next part is set a little bit after the first part, with Quixote having returned home from his initial adventure. Sancho comes to find out when they'll be embarking again, but Quixote's niece tries to keep him away. Quixote lets Sancho in and asks about his reputation. Sancho says that many consider him to be mad, which he is, let's be honest. And as the most meta part of this, it turns out that the first book exists in universe with the novel. So Quixote searches out the author to confront him, but learns the book was actually pretty good. Of course, we get more madness with the niece still trying to convince him to stay around, but he doesn't listen because you can't reason with crazy. Quixote goes out and searches for Dulcinea, and Sancho figures that he can trick Quixote by just showing 3 random girls that he says are Dulcinea and her maidens, enchanted by a wizard so that Quixote will stop accosting strangers. And he believes Sancho because of course he does. They run into a troop of actors who steal Sancho's donkey for a joke, and Quixote threatens them, but Sancho talks him out of it. They meet a Duke and Duchess, and as they read the first novel, they decide to screw with our heroes, like how the Duchess tells Sancho that the lie about Dulcinea being enchanted was actually true, which he believes for some reason. Then they tell Quixote and Sancho how to unenchant Dulcinea, which is having Sancho whip himself 3,300 times willingly. Of course, he downright refuses, since Dulcinea isn't his problem. Sancho agrees later on, but says he'll only do it when he feels like it. The Duke and Duchess continue to indulge Quixote's delusions for enjoyment, and eventually Quixote and Sancho go to Barcelona, and Quixote fights the Knight of the White Moon, who tells him that if Quixote loses, he has to go home and stay there for a year. Quixote loses, obviously, and decides to return home and retire and become a shepherd. But before he can, he ends up getting really sick and shockingly regains his sanity, revealing his name to be Alonso Quijano. He then writes a will, leaving everything to his niece, housekeeper, and Sancho, and writes a letter to the author of the Don Quixote novel, apologizing for creating nonsense for him to write about, and then he passes away. And that was Don Quixote. Was it a good book? Yes, although it was very dense and confusing at times. It's a very disjointed book with random bits that don't really relate all over. Overall, I enjoyed it, and I'm happy I could review it for you. Thanks for joining me for a third classic novel month, and I hope you'll give some of the books we looked at some love. Anyway, that's all the time I have for today. If you'd like to see more reviews, you can hit the subscribe button down below, and if you have any requests and complaints, you can leave those in the comments. And if you'd like, you can support me on Patreon. Time for me to go back to the future. Wait a minute. I didn't bring my copy of the book back with me. So this is... Oh, this is going to be so worth it. I want you all to know, normally I don't condone any sort of messing with the time stream. But 1, he tricked me and I'm entitled to doing this. And 2, the fact that it took me that long to read the book means I have an astronomical library fine. So, thanks for watching. Again, I'm really sorry that I couldn't review Don Quixote. It was just too dense and too long for me to finish within a month. I'll keep reading it and try to finish. Hell, by the time I finish this, I'll probably be an old man. So I'll see you guys next time.